Welcome to the third episode of Mending the Fence, everyone. Sitting on the right side of the table symbolically is I, the host on the right, Sam Stroud, and across from me on the left is the vaunted Emma Daniel.
Hello. How goes it, everybody?
It's all right. This episode is going to test whether or not the show can be successful or not, because there's going to be no common ground today, at least I don't think on our first topic. So.
Oh, I don't think so either. But also 100 likes.
What?
Can we get 100 likes or something? I don't know. Usually whenever people do this kind of thing, they usually say like, hey, let's get a certain amount of likes, or hey,
we're just going
subscribe.
for views right now.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's our bar, which is at 50 right now. So
okay. Well, like us too. I mean, I guess it's a good thing for us to have.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't not like us, but we want to keep our goals sensible.
Exactly.
That's all.
Exactly. Okay. Well, take it away, Samo.
I was gonna let you start because I have a lot to say, and I feel like stuff you could say can rebut what I have to say. So
okay. So I guess I'll just explain the situation then.
Sure.
If you are not aware, dear listener,
somehow
Brett Kavanaugh is currently going through his Supreme Court confirmation, and recently there have been a few allegations of sexual abuse that have come out. Now, one of the allegations is from Christine Blasey Ford, who is a professor, I don't remember at what university, but she alleges that whenever she was 15, it was in high school, Brett and a friend of his, Mark Judge, Brett took her into a bedroom and pressed her down and cupped her mouth with his hand so that she couldn't scream, and pinned her down with the intention supposedly to rape her. The second allegation comes around from a person who Kavanaugh went to Yale with. And what's her name?
Deborah Ramirez.
Ramirez? Wow. Ramirez, man.
Ramirez, whatever.
Man, oh man.
I'm just reading what I'm looking at that's in front of me.
Man, you're like whenever white people say tortilla. That's what that is.
That grinds my gears a lot.
Yeah, same. Deborah Ramirez, she says that in college, she was at a party and Kavanaugh exposed himself to her. So that's where things are standing at the moment. Basically, the debate is, do we believe him? Do we not? So take it away, Sam.
Indeed. You may not guess this if you're an idiot, but
newsflash.
If you are smart, you'll probably have guessed since I'm on the right. And I like Kavanaugh, and I can look at the evidence. I believe that Kavanaugh is innocent, and that these are either people not remembering correctly what happened, or they're just outright lies. So that is my initial take based on the evidence that we've seen and kind of the resulting reactions from the accusers and the accused themselves. So, Emma, I'm sure that you and I disagree on this. Actually, I know you do, because we had a very passionate conversation yesterday. A very passionate conversation, as usual.
Yes. Indeed, you do. I do disagree with you.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing for me. Whenever Anita Hill was testifying against Clarence Thomas, the same thing happened. A woman made allegations, and immediately they were met with, you're a liar, you're terrible, you're a terrible human being, you have political interests, da-da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not saying that isn't true. I'm not going to discount that. However, there isn't an investigation into whether or not these allegations are true. So we kind of don't know anything, do we?
No, we don't. And that's why due process is so important. And that's why when Joe Biden says to hell with it and we should just believe the woman immediately, and when Alyssa Milano says we should believe the accuser immediately, which is somewhat ironic since she herself has been accused recently and has denied those accusations.
Yes, that is very ironic.
I think that is not healthy for rule of law, not healthy for the country, and it's really not healthy for politics to just assume that the man is guilty because he is in power, as Kavanaugh is.
So let me ask you this first. That way I can just bounce everything off of you, because the way that I did my research is I thought of, what are the naysayers saying?
Okay.
And what do I say to naysay them?
Okay, good.
So why do you not believe them?
I have a list of 6 reasons here.
Oh, yes. Okay. Are we going to let you go
Yes.
point by point, or am I going to rebut every single point?
You can do Whichever, which I'm
I'll
sure
do the
you
latter.
want
I'll
to
rebut every single point.
Okay, so the first reason I don't believe her is because the therapist she claims to have confesses to in 2012 doesn't have Kavanaugh by name, and her story is not the same as it was to her therapist in 2012. In her story, it was 4 men. Now she claims it's only 2. And if she had named Kavanaugh, I think it'd be very ironic that the therapist didn't write that down, because Kavanaugh would have been in the 3rd District Appellate Court, I think, at the D.C. Appellate Court at that point. So he would have been a big name. That would be a big deal even in 2012. So I feel like that right there, the discrepancy in the story is a bit suspicious in itself, because if it's so traumatizing, you should be able to remember how many people were in the room when that went down. And the fact that the timelines don't match up is a little funky to me.
You go ahead and read off the rest, because I feel like all of my things are going to all tie together.
Okay, cool. Well, same with me. Wow, 2 brilliant minds think alike. Ford can't remember the details. So she guesses it was 1982 when she was 15. She doesn't know where the event occurred or when it occurred. She doesn't know how she got there, how she got home, and she doesn't even remember, according to her, if Kavanaugh chased her up there or if he was already upstairs when this allegedly took place. So when you have all these gaps, when you can't name a location, you can't name a time, you can give a year and a county. That is very shady, and it's very difficult for someone to believe someone who is so allegedly traumatized with this that they can't remember what happened afterwards. They can't remember how they got there. They can't remember where they were exactly. It was just a party in a house in Maryland. That's basically what she's told us. That's all she knows from this. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasonable suspicion right here. Number 3, she wrote this letter to Feinstein. I think it was 3 weeks before Feinstein released it. It was a month or 2, or not a month or 2, but it was a month at least.
Yeah, a month would be the correct ballpark, I would say.
So a month before Feinstein released this, and that's very suspicious to me, because if this were a credible accusation, I doubt that Feinstein would have held on to this till after the hearings themselves to give Kavanaugh a chance to defend himself, and after she'd already come out and said that she's going to oppose Kavanaugh no matter what. So for her to hold on to this till now, I think, is very suspicious, because if Democrats thought this was really credible, they would have launched this immediately, because they don't want Kavanaugh to be around. If they could find any way to take him down, they would. The FBI is number 4. The FBI has already said this is a political matter. There's nothing to investigate. And they're not wrong, because, it's, 30, 40 years ago? There's nothing to look at here. An FBI investigation would be pointless, because there's nothing that, I don't understand what the FBI could find out that we don't already know, because the people that, this kind of goes into number 5, the people that Ford names either deny they were at the party or said nothing like that occurred at the party, and she doesn't have anyone corroborating her story. She just has a couple people who say that Kavanaugh may have done it, but no one knows for sure if this event even happened in the first place, because this wasn't common knowledge, at least in her community. And I think when people ask why would Ford lie, she's an outspoken Democrat, and her family was ruled against by Kavanaugh's mother when she was a judge. And a lot of people who went to school with Ford said that she keeps grudges long term. So those are my 6 big reasons for why I don't buy what she's saying. Is I think that lack of evidence, and the fact that credible people have stepped in and said there's nothing here, have kind of, I think, that on itself is reasonable suspicion to believe that she's either misremembering or lying.
Okay. All right. So you gave all of your points, and I jotted down the order that you gave those in. So now I'm going to go ahead and give my spiel. So the first thing that you talked about was the therapist.
Yes.
And now here's the thing about that. Whenever it comes to trauma, now let me give a disclaimer first. Okay. I'm going to admit that nobody knows what happens. Nobody knows. Republicans don't know. Democrats don't know. There's fog everywhere. But I'm going off of the assumption that I do believe her. Okay. And I'll explain why in particular soon. But first of all, whenever it comes to this kind of trauma, a lot of psychologists and therapists have agreed that whenever something like this happens, it is very, very common for victims to have trouble remembering many details. It's very common for them to forget when and where things like this happened, but the act itself will often be ingrained in their mind. And this is also consistent with the victims of sexual abuse that I know personally. I have heard many people's testimonies about this kind of thing. And the sort of misplacement of very small details, but then the happening itself standing out. That is very common, at least in my experience and in therapists' experience. So psychologically, it makes sense. I do understand why people would claim say that doesn't lend very much credibility. However, whenever it just takes understanding that whenever somebody goes through this kind of trauma, the brain tries to bury it back automatically. A lot of times you have to sort of force yourself to get out of it. So, and I mentioned this to you last night, in this day and age, a lot of people did not think of reporting this kind of thing. The issue of sexual abuse was not so present as it is today. Whenever women often reported this kind of thing, they were met with, what were you wearing? What were you drinking? You're lying. I'm sure you just said yes or something. They were met with so much distrust. And whenever they came out about it, it was automatically struck down all the time. That was very, very common back then. So that sort of, it's sort of easier to understand at least why the gap in it happening and us finding out about it, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. So whenever victims come out with this kind of allegation, they're doing it because they've seen this person's true character. At least, what happens in the room where it happens. I've been on a Hamilton kick lately.
Like the play?
Yeah, the musical, know. Come on, you like history. You're a history major.
I do, but I don't like Broadway, so I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, we're going to have to change that, but after this.
Fair enough.
So, yes, a lot of people have come out with character testimonials about Brett Kavanaugh and Ford, but I think the FBI themselves, I don't know. Those accounts have been thrown out because if I say about you, oh yeah, he's a good person, absolutely, I can never see him punching somebody in the face, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to punch somebody in the face.
You watch out, you make me angry. I'm coming for your face. Oh
man, get ready, because I will karate you. I don't know karate, I just took dance classes. But so whenever victims go through this kind of thing, it is very, very common for there to be holes for the brain to push out whatever it can. Now, whenever it comes to the corroboration of evidence, yes, that is a very, very tricky topic. It is. However, you have to consider that, so of course, Brett Kavanaugh's friends are not going to say, oh yeah, he totally did that. I mean, no. If you know that your friend is capable of getting in a position of power, and you just saying yes or no was going to either stop or get him in, then I'm sure that a lot of people, especially whenever it comes to these Washington elite prep school kind of people, I'm pretty sure that they would say, oh no, he totally didn't do that. So, there's a chance that his friends were lying too. There's a chance that literally everybody is lying. We don't know a whole lot about Dianne Feinstein holding on to the letter. Now, I can't give any possible reason as to why. I've thought about it. Maybe they thought about, this is, there are holes in this, Republicans are going to try to question her credibility, that kind of thing. Maybe they held on to it for a while just to make sure that the victim was comfortable with it, that she was solid in the testimony, that kind of thing.
None of those things are true, though. She's not comfortable with it, and she's not comfortable testifying, as we've seen, obviously. So,
well, she's not comfortable testifying because if it happened, it makes sense to not want to have to face your accuser. Now, of course, one of her demands was that she would have to testify separately, and that simply will not happen because Anita Hill had to testify in front of Clarence Thomas, of course. But I don't know why Feinstein held on to it with the witnesses, again, especially on Mrs. Ramirez's case.
Well, we'll get to her in a second.
Okay,
we'll stay on Ford right now. Well, I have a whole different list for Ramirez.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll put that on hold for now.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. here are my issues with people who are naysayers. Now,
Me.
yes. So this is something that was mentioned last night. This is not a ploy to just block Republicans from getting into the court, because Gorsuch did not have any accusations against him. Democrats know that sexual abuse allegations would definitely be the thing that would make somebody stop in their tracks whenever it comes to a confirmation hearing. But you didn't see anything happening like that back then.
Balance of power was not in jeopardy back then, though.
Balance of power was not in jeopardy back then, but there was still a great and significant want for Democrats, obviously, to not let a Republican get into the court. And that makes sense. So one thing that I would like to discuss is her motives.
Sure. And I will admit that is the weakest part of my argument, is why she would do it. I'll admit that. But with all the other evidence, I think it's...
Why do you think that she would do it then?
As I already told you.
Oh, well, yeah.
Stop him from getting the seat in the first place.
Here's the thing. She knew beforehand what she was getting into whenever she made these allegations.
Sure.
She knew that she was going to become public enemy number one. She likely knew that the enemy or that the public was going to just go against her.
But they haven't.
Well, she's gotten death threats. She's had to relocate her family.
So has Kavanaugh and his wife. So
have they. I'm guaranteeing that. But you hear of the victims' death threats first. Plus, you have every single media source questioning your credibility and your integrity. Questioning as in...
I haven't read an NYT post trying to debunk anything that Ford is saying. I haven't read a LA Times piece trying to throw her credit. The only people I've seen trying to throw her credibility under the bus is Fox News.
I disagree. In the article, in the New Yorker article, they mentioned that they did mention the claims that people made in support of Kavanaugh. They did mention that they tried to corroborate all the evidence that they could.
Them mentioning other people who are defending Kavanaugh is not them trying to ruin Ford's credibility. It's just them giving the other perspective side. We have not seen an article, an opinion piece driven solely with the intent, except from Fox News, driven with the only intent to make Ford out to be just a dirty, rotten, no good liar.
Well, you know what? Okay, fine. But the thing is, plenty of social media sites. You can at least say that.
Sure.
You know, she has everybody coming at her. Now, why would anybody who is fully intent on lying put themselves through this? Because it is, if this happened, this is already a trauma. Basically having to relocate your entire family after getting death threats, that's basically a trauma in and of itself. Now, I think that she has a very good reason to have come through with this. If she was lying, then I don't think that she would have been honest about the fact that, there are some discrepancies. I don't think that we would have been so able to point those out. And furthermore, I did some research into whenever it comes to false accusations of this kind of thing. So the number of false accusations, whenever it comes to reported incidents, often falls between 2 and 10% of reports. Now, that's kind of a fuzzy number because there have been a lot of studies and a lot of conflicting evidence about that. However, we're going to settle on about 4 to 5 because that's one article that I did see. So that 4 to 5 number, 4 to 5% of all the reported incidents, some studies have found that those numbers will comprise not only false reports, but also unfounded ones. So what that will mean is they'll be able to say, whereas no quote-unquote rape or criminal offense happened, they can't guarantee that a form of sexual assault didn't happen. Something that isn't suable, something that you can't criminally charge somebody for. Now, then you look at that even further, and you think of that 4 to 5%. And then you think of the fact that 2 in 3 people who go through this kind of thing, who face sexual abuse, do not report it at all. So whenever I hear people say, oh, yeah, this kind of thing happens all the time, da-da-da-da-da, and it is often very reported on, I guarantee that. the thing is, since so many of these things are not reported, it makes it very, very difficult for me to distrust her, especially because, so this is one argument that we had last night. You asked me, what is the line for credibility? So you remember this?
Yeah, no, I do, definitely.
Yes. You're just giving me a blank stare, just checking,
I'm just waiting for you to stop so I can start talking, that's all.
All right, well.
I'm ready to return fire here.
Return fire, okay. Well, a reporter named Sandra Newman, she studied hundreds of false accusations for an article in 2017. Now, what Newman found is that most of the time, people who falsely accuse this kind of thing are teenagers. They're teenagers. An accident happens, that kind of thing. They're teenagers. They have a criminal history or a diagnosed disorder of where there is a disorder, actually, of creating assault allegations. That's something that Emma learned yesterday. But she also found that half of the false accusations were not made by the victim, quote unquote, supposed victim themselves. Somebody's parents will say something for them, that kind of thing. She also, so because of that, because Ford has so much at stake, because she doesn't fit into that criteria, and because Newman could not find a single verified example of an adult like Ford falsifying this kind of thing, I think that I'm more inclined to believe her.
Okay, there's a lot there. I'm going to try and just quickly recap so we can move on to the next claim. One, you talk about trauma and like specific small details, but location and time are not small details. Those are very important details that should be remembered, especially when Kavanaugh's already claiming he wasn't in the country for most of that summer. So now when you don't have detail specific, you're not bound to any certain day. So if he happens to not be in the country during the day you claim, don't worry about it because you don't know what day it occurs. I think it's very hypocritical for you to assume genuineness on Christine Ford's part and then not assume that for Kavanaugh's friend's part. I would hope that you would assume that they were moral to a certain degree, where if they knew that their friend had tried to rape someone, they would report that. Again, I think it's hypocritical for someone to say, "Oh, I believe her, but I don't believe all these people because they have power, and by that reason, I don't trust them." You talked about stuff like no witnesses and no one coming forward. I mean, sure, it could be everyone's lying, or it could be nothing happened in the first place. And again, I think, ascribing a motive of genuineness to one side and like kind of a motive of not vitriol, but a motive of invidiousness. I'm going to use that word again.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ew.
It's a good. I like it. To one side is very hypocritical, and I think that you've already said we don't know what's happened, but you are ignoring all of the evidence that suggests it didn't happen to say, oh, I think it has happened because we've never seen anything like this in a study. But what you're describing is all speculation, and it's not, and nothing of what you've said has been proven. So you are arguing that we need to halt a very successful man's career, a man who has not shown this pattern in any other situation in his life, a pattern of abuse and aggression, I guess.
Actually, well, his friends have come out and said he was often belligerently drunk and got very arrogant and aggressive when he was, especially whenever he was in school.
Being a stupid teenager does not mean that you are an abuser throughout your adult life. And again, as I've said, nothing, even if that is true, that's no reason for him to be held off the Supreme Court because he's an adult. We all do stupid things as kids. And that really applies to, I think, the second accusation with the first one. But it's just rampant speculation right now, and that is not good enough for you to say that, oh, because of this, because of all this speculation, we don't think he should serve on the Supreme Court because of stuff that one person has said that no evidence can back up.
Now, granted, I think personally that there should at least be an FBI investigation because whenever Anita Hill got her investigation, it lasted 3 days. And Republicans have plenty of time to seal this confirmation if they so desired before the elections. They absolutely do. Anita Hill's FBI investigation took, some people say 2 days, but it was basically like 3. Ended very quickly, and then it didn't even impact anything. So for
the
me,
FBI has already deferred to investigate this, though, so I don't understand what everyone still wants them to do, because they've already said they won't investigate this. This has already been referred to them. They've already said they won't. So why is this now? Why is there pressure now?
Granted, I don't think it's actually going to happen. I wish it would, but it won't. And I'm at least realistic about that. One thing that you mentioned in particular, the time, So I understand that a lot of people have issues with the fact that it was like 35 years ago. But then you also think of the fact that Bill Clinton, his was 21 years ago. And so many men that have been accused recently have cases coming from much, much longer ago. So there is that. I'll say that I shouldn't have assumed that his friends would hide it for him. I'm honestly more inclined to believe that they just didn't know about it. That maybe they just forgot about it or something. Maybe one of them was more drunk than the other. I don't know. But the issues that I have with this are a lot bigger, and it's a big thing for women, in my opinion. And of course, you're going to roll your eyes at that. You are.
No, I'm not going to roll my eyes at that. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I just think just because it's a big thing for women doesn't mean we need to ignore the evidence that has presented itself. And just because this is a women's issue doesn't mean we need to throw out objectivity.
And I believe that, Kavanaugh should have an opportunity to say his piece, and he will, and that Ford will have an opportunity to say hers as well. Here's the thing that I just have so much of an issue with is Republicans already have this in the bag. Why are they trying so hard? That is the thing.
Trying to what?
Trying so hard to discredit her, trying so hard to just move this along, because they've already all admitted that he's going to get on the court anyways.
I don't see a lot of Republican lawmakers going out of their way to try and discredit Ford. I see a lot of people just saying they're going to just keep their heads down, give her testimony, and move on. I don't see a lot. I know Chuck Grassley hasn't said anything about Ford's credibility, and he's the one running this.
That is correct. How a lot of these things come from not explicit.
Well, I mean, if we're going to look at subliminal messaging from both parties, there's a treasure trove of things we could discover about Democrats as well. So.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. I guarantee. But, I mentioned this last night. One of the things that one senator said, I can't imagine being accused of something like this. Well, if this happened, I can't imagine this happening. And plus, Republicans were so quick to just, as soon as allegations against Al Franken came out, Republicans were very quick to side with the victims on that.
And Democrats weren't.
I'm not saying that we were in the right about that. I'm not. I was immediately with the victim.
My only point is, your point about Republicans being partisan about this, that shouldn't, if you notice, I haven't mentioned Democrats or Republicans here, because I know if the accuser was a Republican woman and the person being accused is a Democrat, the roles would be reversed. I'm just focusing on the accuser and the accused. I'm not bringing in political parties or anything like that, because we both know that if the roles were reversed, Republicans would be calling for delay and Democrats would be saying that we're just going to move forward and ignore this.
Well, let's move on to the next. You go ahead and do yours.
Deborah Ramirez, sorry to be culturally insensitive about that, everyone. I think her case is even weaker than the first one.
I do agree with you on that.
Again, there's no witnesses. But this one's even worse because the New Yorker, the people who ran this piece, said they couldn't find a single person who even confirmed that the party happened in the first place other than Ramirez. There's no certainty that this person was even Kavanaugh because Ramirez says that she doesn't remember who it was. She just thinks she heard someone say it was Brett Kavanaugh. That is her total accusation, is somebody maybe at a party that may not have happened said that possibly Brett Kavanaugh was the person who may have or may not have exposed himself to her while she was drunk on the floor. Yes. And it took her 6 days to assess her memory. If this was going to trial, this thing would be thrown out immediately. There is no grounded evidence about this. And unlike the first accusation, where at least there was secondhand hearsay about this at some point, no one has heard about this until her best friend allegedly, at that time, said that she not mentioned. No one has heard about this until this nomination has occurred. There isn't even a therapist note from 2012 about this. There's nothing. This has come straight out of the blue, and there is nothing. You can't confirm this event happened. You can't confirm Kavanaugh was even there. There's no confirmation anywhere. And this is why I ask, what is the rubric for a credible accusation? Because this doesn't meet anything.
So I do agree that her testimony did have a lot of issues. It really did. And I think that part of that comes from the fact that reporters did approach her first as well, instead of, this is assuming that it happened, that instead of letting her come forward first.
The person who wrote it, Ronan Farrow, who coincidentally broke the Harvey Weinstein story, said the only reason that she confessed anything is because, quote unquote, Democrats came looking. So if that says anything.
Came looking.
Yep.
So I agree with you that Ford's testimony holds far more weight than Ramirez's, especially because Ramirez's, you really can't convict anybody for that kind of thing. There's really no criminal evidence from that. I have, on the other hand, encountered a few confirmations about what happened from friends, that kind of thing. And allegedly, I don't know what the deal is with this. The reporter who broke the story mentioned a series of conversations from Yale alumni that were supposedly discussing the incident. Some friends about Kavanaugh's past actions, quote unquote. I don't know what the deal is with that. I guarantee. Yeah, I have a lot of issues with her testimony as well. It is very, very difficult to say, I want to believe you. I think that, but she makes it very, very hard. And I think that because of that, we should focus on Ford's, because if Ford's came out to be true, then it would lend Ramirez more credibility. But Ramirez doesn't. I don't see any conceivable way of really guaranteeing Ramirez's thing.
And this is kind of taking a different gear, but I think this is really this really damages the Me Too movement, where you have people like Ramirez who come out and say it's bad, and then people in the Me Too they have to kind of back her up, because they said you have to believe the person who's the accuser all the time. So when you have to stoop this low to say that I believe her, even though there's literally nothing, is kind of a joke to the movement. And you have Michael Avenatti, who's treating this like a reality TV show, where he's like, yeah, I'm going to reveal another accuser in 48 hours.
Yeah, come on.
If someone was raped, that's not something you postpone for television effect or anything like that.
No, I agree.
And he's damaging, if there even is a third accuser, he's damaging that credibility. And the Me Too movement's kind of become a joke in the last week, because you've got all these testimonies with people who, like Feinstein not holding on the letter, damages that credibility, makes it look like it was just a last-minute ploy to stop Kavanaugh. You've got this testimony that's come out that Democrats came looking for. That is super weak, and there's nothing to back it up right now. And you've got Avenatti, who, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, big fan of the left, who's teasing us like, oh, there's a third accuser coming. Like, that's not a joke. If someone got raped, that's not something you, publicly tease about for 48 hours before it happens. Like, no, you come out now and you tell the American public what's going on, because we deserve to know. And it's very disrespectful to to people who have been raped, and to, if there is a third accuser, it's very disrespectful to her to be treated like some kind of sideshow.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's like whenever you say, I have a question, like, come on, just spit it out. Yeah. I agree that he should, stop the grandstanding and just get on with the show already. It's Michael Avenatti. I'm not gonna be able to say anything about that until anything is said about it. Yep. It's possible that things will change. He said in the next 48 hours, so who knows? But I'm not sure. For me, it is very difficult to not trust her, simply because I know my own experience. I know so many more people who have told the truth than have lied.
Sure, but as I told you last night, none of this should be grounds to make Kavanaugh withdraw his nomination, because this is all hearsay. There's no concrete evidence for any of this. And so, as I said last night, I don't want the precedent to be that if you come up with an accusation, no matter how unfounded it possibly is, and no matter, there should be a quantity of evidence to back up an accusation before it's able to ruin someone's prospect of being on the Supreme Court, other than just saying it happened. Because that's what's happened. We have two people saying it happened, and there's really nothing else behind it other than them just insisting that it happened. And I don't want that to become the new precedent in politics, where an accusation that doesn't have any evidence to back it up can ruin a man's life. Because that's what it'll do to Kavanaugh. It'll ruin his life if he doesn't get this. Because now he'll be branded as like a sexual predator. His family, their reputations are going to be tarnished. This is not some game. And I don't want people to just be able to ruin a man's life like this on accusations alone with no substantive evidence behind it.
Okay, so the rest of my main point sort of just ties everything together.
Go for it.
So
tie it up like a Christmas present.
Tie it up like a Christmas present with a big blue bow. I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be realistic. This isn't going to do anything.
No.
I know that for a fact. This is not going to do a darn thing, just like Anita Hill, unfortunately, didn't do anything. Since there's no physical evidence left, and there has been significant difficulty corroborating evidence, it's basically a he said, she said. And those involved hate that, but that is what it is at the moment. It comes down to a background of race and gender, probably. That will often probably influence what a lot of people have to think about this, especially if you know somebody who has been in this position.
I wouldn't say Kavanaugh's race or gender is giving him an upper hand in these allegations.
I'm talking about whenever it comes to public opinion.
Okay.
That sort of...
But I still think Kavanaugh's has a very good reputation as a human being, as the stuff he does. You know, he coaches CYO girls basketball. He works in soup kitchens in his local Catholic parish. He's outwardly, and you know, as we all assumed until a week ago, a very spiritual and good moral man. And I think that's the reason why everyone respects him so much. It's not just because he's a white guy with a lot of powers, because he's succeeded in his career, but he's been a loving father and a caring husband, and there's no reports of anything within his own family that he's domestically abused anyone.
And I can agree with that. I disagree with his politics. I do. But I can agree that for now, he seems like a stand-up guy. And one thing that you and I were just talking about earlier, you just wrote an essay on this. You can fake character. You
Sure.
can.
Yeah.
And so there are just so many questions. And ultimately, this is what I have noticed about this whole thing. This is the fifth time, at least, that I can think about this kind of thing. And this all follows a trend. So we have Kavanaugh. Most recently, Donald Trump, with all of the women who have come out accusing him of a multitude of things. Roy Moore, Clarence Thomas, and Bill Clinton. They all follow the same formula of how they handle this kind of thing. And I found it pretty interesting.
I would disagree with you on that, because the way Roy Moore handled it and the way Kavanaugh's handling it are very different. I don't know how I wasn't alive when this happened, Bill Clinton, so I can't tell you how that happened, or Clarence Thomas. But between Moore, Trump, and Kavanaugh, they each handle it in very, very different ways.
They handle it differently in the way that they speak about it, because they're different people. Because
Roy Moore and Trump are dirtbags, and Kavanaugh is an honorable man.
I can agree with. I can mostly agree with that. Yeah. But here's the thing, though. It starts with obviously denial, obviously vehemently discrediting whoever did it.
So that's right. Kavanaugh hasn't attacked Ford or Ramirez. Apologies. I'm not a racist. I promise I'm not.
God.
But he hasn't gone after them credibly. He just has denied those things have happened. Whereas, Moore and Trump, absolutely. They went down to these despicable levels of trying to discredit them at any cost. But Kavanaugh's not done that.
Well, he did not go down to the despicable levels, but whenever you call it a political smear, whenever you call it that kind of thing.
If it didn't happen, that is what it is.
A lot of people take that as the same rhetoric, not in the same words per se, but the same action that Moore and Trump and Thomas and Clinton tried to do. After you categorically deny, you affirm good character, you insult the other's character, and you move on. And that's exactly what's going to happen again. What all of this shows to me is, and this is true whether or not these accusations are true, the way that these kind of things are handled, there's a serious issue with it. And I'm pretty sure you and I will agree on that. We might have differences on what issue in particular.
Oh, yeah.
But we can agree on that. The way that sexual harassment and sexual abuse, the way that is handled, not only in Washington, but everywhere, has up until now just been a cluster. because for such a long time, women were terrified to come out about it because of harassment from accusers and family and friends and police officers and naysayers, all kinds of things. There's that has really, really set these kind of things sort of aside, you know. It really puts this kind of thing into perspective whenever you think of just how many people this possibly also, I say possibly also because, you know, I'm trying to maintain that doubt for you. Yeah. I got you, helping you out. Yeah. You have all of these people that have not and still do not feel comfortable about reporting this kind of thing. And I don't think that the attacks that Ramirez and Ford have gotten, even if it's not true, the way that people have attacked them does not encourage any victims of sexual abuse. It doesn't encourage them to come forward. Because if it happened, if they would have come forward years ago, then none of this would have happened. But here we are.
Sure. All that said, that doesn't change the fact that Kavanaugh doesn't deserve to he doesn't deserve to lose his career over this.
No, he doesn't, and he's not going to.
And you may not be wrong about that, but that doesn't impact the current situation at hand, which is that there are two unfounded claims that are going to potentially destroy a man's life that have been laid out in the public eye. And so far they haven't been proven true. So, you know, when people talk about, oh, it's a shame that, you know, women were discouraged and all that, that's a conversation for a different topic. Because right now we are talking about whether or not a man tried to rape a woman and if he, you know, exposed himself to another. That's the topic at hand here, is whether or not we're going to allow accusations that are backed by no facts to ruin a man's life, or if we're going to have set some kind of standard where you have to know a certain amount of things, or you have to at least have an idea about what happened other than just it happened. That's what I think is important. It's not that women, I mean, yeah, that is important, but it's not important to this certain area, because I think the big question is, that's why I keep asking you, what do we allow as a credible accusation and what do we not allow as credible?
I keep telling you, it's impossible to blanket that kind of thing, at least as far as I see it.
You know, and that's fine, but see, I don't see it that way, and this is going to set a very clear standard, I think, depending how this turns out, depending on if he gets in the Supreme Court or not.
We know how it's going to turn out.
I think he will, but if he doesn't, this will not comfort me because, and not to sound like an SJW snowflake or anything, the thought of someone just accusing me of trying to rape them and saying, yeah, but I don't know anything else about it, I just know it happened, and that could end my career. I don't want that to happen. I don't want someone who just doesn't like me to just come out and lie about it, provide no facts, and ruin my life. Mm-hmm. So I don't want this precedent to be set that you can come out, say that someone tried to rape you, and then provide no key details about it, and that's enough to ruin that man's life. I don't want that to be the standard.
And I understand where you're coming from there. And fundamentally, what we have here, like I said, is he said, she said. You have different accounts from different people, all conflicting with each other. Mm-hmm. They're like nothing is alike at all. We don't know anything. And whenever, since there are so many players in the game, since there are so many factors, since there is not a whole lot of evidence, since there have been considerable problems gathering it, like I said, I agree. It's not going to get anywhere, these claims. And there's not really, honestly, there's not really any chance that anything will come out of it, because there is obviously no scientific information left over. People have been saying that Kavanaugh should be subject to a polygraph test, but those have been deemed not accurate multiple times. So, you know, whatever, if Ford passed one, they've been deemed inaccurate multiple times.
Can't use them in court.
Exactly. And that seems just more like to sway the public, if anything.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And, well, you also have to think about how big of a deal the public was in this. how big a deal the public opinion was. I mean, immediately it was just bam, bam, right and left, opposite sides, opposite ends of the room.
In a surprise to no one.
As a surprise to no one. But I don't think that it's a very good thing that both sides go to the automatic extreme. Fundamentally from all this, I do believe her. I believe her because my life experience with knowing people like this. What I find more compelling, I would say, is just what exactly this shows. The issues that we have with sexual assault, like I mentioned. It shows how quickly the country was to divide and turn on each other and turn on all parties. I mean, Kavanaugh got death threats too. I'm not about that. That's not cool. You just don't do that. So whenever Republicans and whenever the people and the media make such a big deal about it, I understand. But be realistic. It's not going to change anything. It's not. Yep. It is not.
I'll make a final point, and then we'll get to the partisan part this week. Sure, that's all fine and grand about revealing stuff, but I don't think we've learned anything new. And I think the only thing new is coming out of this is what we as a nation are going to allow, what the accusations we're going to allow to end a man's career is. If this is going to end a man's career, then any kind of accusation can. I think that's what we're learning. We're learning is how sympathetic is Congress specifically, but are we as a country, how sympathetic are we to the accuser? Are we willing to listen to them and grant them credibility when they provide no facts? Or are we going to kind of set a standard of, okay, you have to have this, this, and this in order to be considered a credible accuser? I think that's what's the biggest thing at stake here. All right, well, we're going to move on to the partisan part now. I apologize for the length of this episode. I know we're trying to make them shorter, but there's just no way this might be our longest one. So I'm going to make this as quick as I can for this week, everyone, and I'm setting the timer now. Okay, so recently Donald Trump went before the UN and proclaimed his rejection of globalism and took aim at several UN groups, such as the Human Rights Council, which is led by Saudi Arabia, where women cannot leave their homes without their husbands accompanying them. So I think rightfully U.S. treats that as a joke. And also there, if you're atheist or gay, you can be killed for that. He's come under flack a lot from, the left side of America for this, they say that this is like all part of his strategy to appease Putin, is to shoot down the UN and cut funding, all that. But I think the issue here is much more deep than that. A nation has a right to put itself before globalism. And when the U.S. thinks the UN is acting against its own interests, it, like every other country does, has every right to make decisions that will help itself before the global community. The U.S. is fully justified if they don't want to spend a certain amount of money in the UN, or if they want to condemn certain parts, or if they want to leave certain parts of the UN, because ultimately, as a country, it is their right to protect themselves and their interests before they worry about what's best for the EU or what's best for the Middle East. And most of the time, global interests and national interests overlap. But when they don't, it is not fair to criticize a nation for acting in its own best interest, because that's the nation's job, is to act in the best interest of the people in its country. And people who don't do that are not fulfilling their function to the best of their abilities. So whenever someone says that, Trump's just helping Putin or something, that's a load of horse hockey. And frankly, every nation has the right to do whatever they feel is best for their own country. And that is my partisan part.
Although, wait a second.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. I know you are not trying to respond to me.
No. I'm not trying to respond. I'm not trying to respond. I'm trying to do some delightful banter. But
oh, my God.
I want you to tell the world what you told me earlier. Because I admitted that whenever the story broke, I was in class and I did not get to research it.
What story?
The UN thing. And all I saw was the headline that they laughed at us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some people laughed at Trump for saying this, but in my opinion, if socialists laugh at us, I'm fine with that, because I'd rather have them laughing at us than applauding us, frankly.
Oh, I'm gonna find a way to disagree with you eventually, but
all right. You work your way into that one. All right. I think we're done for this week. subscribe to us, please, by the way, because a certain opinion editor, who I will not name, who works at the Trop, has decided that he's going to post our episodes almost a week after we record them. So if you want to get these as they release, please subscribe to us on YouTube, and don't just wait for the Trop news article, because you're going to be, I think, 6 days behind us. So
man, you come in head first for us.
Don't live 6 days in the past. Just subscribe, and I'm probably going to start Instagram for this. Just branch out.
Oh, that's happening.
Yeah, branch out our media a little bit.
I can help you with that since I'm Instagram savvy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I think that's all for this week. We should have a theme now, so hopefully a theme will play as soon as I'm done talking. If not, something horrible has gone wrong. So
if not, Sam gave me a beautiful rendition of it in the office earlier. What was it like? Do 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 do. I don't know.
I'm not gonna say it on recording because I sound ridiculous. Anyway,
it was beautiful.
Sorry about the length, everyone. I'll edit out as much as I can to shorten it, but we'll see you next week.
Bye bye.